Thank you. Good morning. What I'm going to try is to share with you a kind of a model on ideological polarization. That will be the first part of it. What are the various bases or motivations for that, and the escalation process. And the second part will be a kind of a journey looking in a different angle on radicalization and extremism from a different point of view. So, talking about diverse motivation of polarization, the well-known is the religious one. The religious one, and we are dealing usually with radical Islamism as in general. It has been mentioned here, the Boko Haram, in Nigeria, but many other organizations. But there is also an intern radicalization and extremism based on polarization between two different sects, like the Shia and the Sunni. And there is no need to give examples, you can see, and there is a lot of them. The second basis for polarization is the national or territorial base or motivation. We have seen that in the European countries last years of the last century, and we can see it nowadays even in Spain with Catalonia, and we personally are facing it in our area with the dispute between Israel and the Palestinians on that nationality or territoria between the Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. These were the two familiar with, but there are two others. One based on socio-economical issues, when there are big gaps among society at the same country, when people are frustrated from their low-level socio-economical level. And we have seen that around the Middle East during the last few years, what was called the Arab Spring that began in Tunisia and then Libya, in Egypt, and even at the beginning of what has happened in Syria. It turns to a civil war, but it begins with kind of these demonstrations and riots and regarding that problem. And the fourth one is really extreme ideology, and we can see the racism and the Nazism and fascism and all these kind of extreme ideologies. And even when you are looking now at Western countries, we can see in Germany, lately, the neo-Nazis are rising again, and in other countries, the extreme right wing is rising again. So these, I would say, motivations for polarization turns, or might turn, into violence and terrorism. And there are, of course, I'm generalizing everything, it's not that straight. There are 4 steps to get there. The first step is pragmatism. There is a dispute, there are discussions, 2 parties are having discussion among themselves, they have declaration for each other, but it is contained, it's quiet, things are being dealt in a quiet way. The second phase is dogmatism. It turns to something that confrontation based on that disagreements more and more, high level of reciprocal declaration of the parties against each other, but it is still contained in a way, sometimes by a third party, mediators, but things are still being contained in a quiet, in a calm way, relatively, of course. Then we get to extremism. Extremism, it's really a high level of disagreement. It's what we call the blame game between parties. There are some occasions or even some fights between the parties, but it is still on the edge. It hasn't fallen yet into real terrorism. Sometimes there is a third party trying to maintain discussions, but not always it works. And the last part, of course, is the terrorism. It is really direct, intentional violence, trying to achieve goals by using force, no ethical, nothing, and you don't have to say more words about what it is, terrorism. So the diverse motivations, as I said, are four: about religious, national, territorial, socio-economical, and extreme ideology, and there is also four kind of stages in the escalation process. What I would argue is that the critical turning point is between stage 3 and stage 4, because what we have seen till now, it's escalation process, but the slippery slope comes at that point when there is a kind of a trigger point that changes the situation. And the trigger point can be internal or external, that doesn't have anything to do with the basis of that dispute, but that's how it turns into terror. So let's try to find out what potential trigger points there are to light the fire. So first of all, the high level of violent or criminal acts by immigrants in the community, that's what is happening from time to time in Europe. We have seen it in Paris, we have seen it just a week ago or 2 weeks ago in Germany. This is one potential trigger point. The other is government brutality against demonstration in a civilian demonstration. Frustrations that derives from personal or professional circumstances. It doesn't have to do anything with reality. But when someone is frustrated because he doesn't have any option as to his opinion for high education, or he had high education and he doesn't find a place to work that suits his education, or sometimes someone got up in the morning and had a quarrel with his parents, and he comes out and he is now like this to do something as a terror activity. And there is a direct and indirect incitement that utilizing vulnerable population. I'll elaborate a little later on the prisons, but also outside. So how we cope with that? There is a need, of course, to manage it, to cope with it. And the main idea is that we have to do things together. All of us, it's the governmental, the security, the community, the municipal, whoever is in this place. So what are the possible actions of coping? First of all, it's a kind of a risk assessment. First of all, we have to identify, and identifying changes or different environment among focus population. Things are going there. We have to identify it. Identifying the stage or in the situation, evaluating what's going on now. And of course, being able to identify potential trigger points, because I said this is the crucial part. This is the critical point. So there is a need to identify. So after we did identify, there is a need to do things. So first we'll be trying to calm down the environment and deal with frustration. If we know that it's going on, we can take care of it, or at least try to do so. Of course, there is a need for professional, hands-on intelligence cooperation. If one law enforcement agency knows that things are going around and they don't say it and they don't update the other law enforcement or security organization, sometimes it's in vain, meaning that we need to have intelligence hands-on and cooperation, of course. And the last point here is, I think it's one of the most important, is multi-dimension cooperation models, meaning dealing with the religious part, culture, security, education at all levels. And it always begins down there among the community, municipal. And then it goes to the level, the national level, the regional level, and the global level or international level. To conclude that part, I tried to give you a kind of a model of what are the motivations and how it might escalate, and even some potential solutions or the ways to deal with it. And now I'm going to take you to a different journey based on that, of course, that I'm sure that you haven't heard a lot about it, because if I would ask you to raise hand who has been visiting or working or dealing with prisons, I assume there will be very few over here. It's a military, it's security, less the issue of prisoners, and I had the opportunity, of course, at my time to hold about 3,500 to 4,000 terrorists in my prison. So I've learned it what I call firsthand. So lone wolves, the phenomena of lone wolves, those that are not belonging to a specific terror organization, they act by their own. What are the spotting pools for them? The first is the criminal. You know, not the vast majority, but over 65% of the jihadists in Europe has a criminal background. Some of them, many of them, even spent some time in prisons. So they are just changing the nature of what they are doing. The second are the frustrated, as I said before. Until now, nobody realized who am I. Now I'm going to show you I am someone. When I'm doing such a kind of an operation, a terror act, you will know who I am or who I was. It depends on the results, of course. And the third part of it, or the third spotting pool, is these recruits, the recruitments. And outside in community, it's usually on ideological or theological basis, by internet, by darknet, by incitement or whatever. And in prison, it's the vulnerable inmates, which I want to share with you some information. There is a weak population. People in prison are weak people, of course. I'm not talking about the organized crime gang leaders. I'm talking about the population, the population in prison. They are vulnerable. And they just need something to pour on them. It could be financial, it could be religious, it could be whatever, and then it might grow into potential terrorists. I'll share with you the recruiting process in prison, but I want to say a few words before that. Practicing religious does not mean being a terrorist. Practicing religious in prison does not mean being a terrorist. On the contrary, sometimes it's something to desire for, something to hope for. Some of the rehabilitation processes contain among them the issue of practicing religious. But there is a need to draw a line between practicing religious and extremism. So it begins with a penal inmate that comes to prison. He doesn't have anything behind him. He does not belong to any organized crime gang. He is looking for backing, for belonging to someone. In prison, there are deliberately people who, few of them, of course, that deliberately committed a petty offense, petty crimes, to get there, because they have a role. They need to recruit others. So they are there. Nobody knows that they have that mission to do. So they are giving him backing, grouping, don't worry, we are here for you, we'll secure you, everything is okay. Then come the next phase, come with us. It might be prayers, it might be other activities, but belong to us, come near to us. Then come the situation that, you know, you don't have money in your canteen account, we'll assist you, or your family outside needs some assistance, you are here, they don't have anything, we'll take care of them, by other people outside, of course. If that doesn't work, comes the other side. Your daughter is 12 years old and she's studying that specific school, isn't she? Believe me, this is enough. He will do whatever he will be asked to. And then come, again, the consultation, indoctrination. After that come the test mission. And the test mission doesn't have to be straight terror act. No. He just needs to show them that he is committed by doing something in prison, maybe having a quarrel with another inmate, assaulting someone, or sending his son, brother, outside to take a paper from point A to point B, just to show that he is committed. And then come the rewards, and then come the indoctrination, and then we have a potential terrorist. When he will be released from prison, he would be a kind of lone wolf, or what we call, different way, what we call the sleeping cells. How you minimize this risk in prison? Of course, increasing awareness among staff, correctional intelligence system. It's a management tool, crucial one. And the third is cooperation between law enforcement agencies, as I said. How you deal with terrorists in prison. Well, there is a lot to say about it, but I'll try to summarize. First of all, personal classification of each terror inmate, and then placing him in the specific place that I can control it. And then specific relevant programs. People would say de-radicalization. I would say yes, try to de-radicalize, but it is much efficient to prevent radicalization than afterwards to take care of de-radicalization. Monitoring of each inmate or prisoner behavior, tight monitoring, identifying the vulnerable that I've been talking about, inmates and those that are potential recruits, and taking them aside or trying to give them alternatives for that, and preventing radicalization among the penal inmates by doing all what I've said until now. Possible rehabilitation process. People say there is a possibility to rehabilitate terror inmates. I would say maybe. How can we do that? First of all, we need to know that an inmate will is essential to get rehabilitated. If he doesn't believe that he is an offender or he has done wrong things, he will not be rehabilitated. The second is that whenever we do whatever we do in prison, if there is nothing there in the community for him, he will get straight back to become either a terrorist or a criminal or whatever. Thank you. So I said that everything in prison should be in coordinating with the outside. And what can be done among community? It has to be continuing the process of rehabilitation in the community, but it is more important to get to know that the community should be acknowledged and believe that what he is doing is wrong, because if he will be considered as a hero, nothing will work when he comes out of prison. So engage the local community in leadership, in policy planning, development, because we need to increase trust between security organization, between law enforcement organization, between governance in the community. And I'm speaking about, communities that came to Germany, came to other countries. You need to be there and to build the trust so they will be able to assist you. Professional eyes on the ground, of course, As I said, interactive relation between law enforcement agency and the local community, so they will be able to work together. And the last thing is supporting moderate religious leaders. You know, the vast majority of the population and the religious leaders are moderate. We don't hear them. We hear only the extremists, because the extremists are loud. And those moderate people are quiet. They are not stepping forward and saying what they have to say because they are being threatened. So us as a community in the municipal, national level has to support them, to give them security, to support them, to let them the option to come forward and say what they want to say, because that will influence on society, on the community. So at the end, I want to say, the vast majority are moderated, but there are some radicals that are trying to explode that bomb on their shoulders. There are two options. One, for us, one is to ignore, to say, no, nothing happened till now, so let's leave it here. But the other is to enlighten. Trying? Yes, I'm trying. And the second option is to enlighten the issue and say the moderates should be encouraged, the radical should be taken into either treatment or custody or whatever is needed to be done. Thank you.